In an age long since consigned to memory, before the iron sinews of railroads had stitched the vast American continent together, and before cities scraped the clouds with towers of steel, there lay a small frontier village named Oak Haven. It was a humble settlement, a mere handful of cabins and clapboard buildings nestled in a gentle valley between the ancient forested hills of the west. Life in Oak Haven was a tapestry woven with threads of simplicity and profound hardship. The villagers were bound to the rhythms of the earth, their days dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. They toiled from dawn until dusk, coaxing life from the soil in the spring, gathering the bounty in the autumn, and steeling themselves against the merciless bite of winter. Yet, for all its challenges, a resilient warmth pulsed through the community, a fellowship forged in the crucible of shared labor and the quiet, unspoken covenant of neighborly care. At the very heart of Oak Haven, both geographically and spiritually, stood a blacksmith's forge. By day, it was a place of clamor and industry, its wide mouth breathing plumes of grey smoke into the sky. By night, its hearth cast a flickering, vital glow that held the darkness at bay. Within this sanctuary of fire and iron worked a man who would become a legend in the village annals, a man remembered not for the raw power in his arms, but for the immeasurable gentleness of his heart. His name was Old Ben. Ben was a figure hewn from the very elements he commanded. He was a tall man with shoulders as broad as an oak beam and a face weathered by decades of proximity to the forge's searing heat. His hair and beard, once the color of coal, were now streaked with the silver of ash, and his hands were maps of his life's work, calloused, scarred, and yet possessing a surprising dexterity. To observe him at his anvil was to witness a symphony of strength and patience. Each resounding strike of his hammer was not an act of violence against the metal, but a steady, deliberate persuasion, as if he were coaxing from the inert iron the purpose that lay dormant within it. He believed that everything, from a plowshare to a horseshoe, had an innate potential for usefulness, and it was his job to simply reveal it. His forge was far more than a workshop, it was the village's vital artery. Farmers, their faces etched with worry, would arrive with broken plows that were the sole means of their livelihood. Weary travelers on the westward trails would lead their exhausted horses to be shod with new sturdy shoes for the arduous journey ahead. Mothers would come with a cracked hinge from a cabin door or a broken kettle, small domestic crises that, in the frontier, could escalate into significant hardships. And though Ben's livelihood depended on his trade, his compassion always outweighed his desire for coin. He would assess each customer not by the weight of their purse, but by the weight of their need. For those who could pay, his prices were fair. For those who could not, he asked for nothing. A man's need, he would often say in his deep, quiet voice, must always come before a man's coin. The children of Oak Haven adored him. On lazy, sun-drenched afternoons, when the air was thick with the sweet smell of wood smoke and the hypnotic, rhythmic clang of his hammer, they would congregate at the wide open doorway of his forge. They would sit for hours, their small faces illuminated by the fire's dance, mesmerized by the transformation of glowing metal. He never shooed them away or saw them as a nuisance. On the contrary, he seemed to draw energy from their youthful wonder. When he paused in his work, he would often pick up a scrap of discarded iron, heat it until it glowed like a captured sunset, and with a few deft taps of his small hammer, shape it into a tiny, miraculous figure. A bird with wings outstretched as if in mid-flight, a horse no bigger than a child's thumb, a spinning top that would whirl with dizzying speed across the dusty floor. These were not mere trinkets, they were tokens of joy, small masterpieces of kindness that the children clutched in their hands and carried home as priceless treasures. Ben's kindness was a constant, like the stream that flowed through the valley, but it was during one particular winter, a winter harder, colder, and more unforgiving than any in living memory, that the true, profound measure of his heart was revealed to all. The year had begun with a gentle and deceptive promise. The spring was mild, the summer was warm and fruitful, and the autumn yielded a harvest so generous that the villagers felt a rare sense of security. But as the last golden leaves fell from the oaks, the weather turned with a sudden malevolent fury. It was as if the sky itself, having lulled them into a state of comfort, had decided to test the very limits of their endurance. The snow came not in gentle flurries but in a blinding horizontal assault, driven by a wind that moaned and shrieked through the hills like a hungry beast. Within days, the familiar landscape vanished, buried beneath immense sculpted drifts of white. The world shrank to the confines of one's own cabin. The streams and the village well froze solid, forcing the men to undertake perilous treks to chop through thick ice for water. Woodpiles, which had seemed so robust in autumn, dwindled with alarming speed. Families who had managed to fill their cellars with potatoes, grain, and salted meats fared better, but even they soon found themselves rationing every portion, their eyes betraying a quiet fear of the future. Those with meager stores, however, faced a more immediate and terrifying prospect. They were left with little more than faith and the hope that the winter would break its grip. It was a season that demanded more than just endurance, it demanded a depth of compassion that could thaw the frost of despair. Among the families who suffered most acutely was the Dawson family. They lived in a small, weathered cabin at the farthest edge of the village, where the forest began to reclaim the cleared land. Sarah Dawson, a widow whose husband had been taken by fever some years prior, was raising her two children, young Samuel and a babe in arms named Lily. Their small plot of land had yielded just enough to see them through past winters, but this season was different. Their woodpile was the first in the village to be exhausted. Worse, the cast iron stove that was the sole source of warmth in their small home, strained by the constant, desperate need for heat, developed a catastrophic crack down its side. With a final sorrowful groan, it gave way, rendering it useless. Without the stove, the bitter, invasive cold crept into their home, turning their breath to mist and chilling the very marrow in their bones. The youngest child, Lily, began to develop a shallow, rattling cough that tore at her mother's heart with every sound. Despair, colder and more terrifying than any frost, began to settle over the small cabin. It was then that old Ben's kindness transformed from a series of gentle gestures into a force of salvation. Young Samuel, his face blue with cold but his eyes burning with determination, bundled himself in what rags he could find and fought his way through the blizzard to the blacksmith's forge. He burst through the door, a small whirlwind of snow and desperation, and explained his family's plight in gasping breaths. Ben listened, his weathered face grim. He asked no questions and made no hesitation. He pulled on his heaviest coat, wrapped a scarf around his face, and followed the boy back into the raging storm. The journey was a brutal struggle against the elements. The wind tore at them, and the snow was so deep in places that Ben had to carry Samuel on his broad shoulders. When they finally reached the Dawson cabin, the sight within steeled his resolve. Sarah Dawson was huddled over the cradle, trying to warm her infant with her own body heat, her face a mask of quiet terror. Without a word, Ben examined the broken stove. It was a heavy, cumbersome thing, but he lifted it onto his back as if it were a mere bundle of sticks. He carried it back through the blizzard to his forge, the immense weight a testament to the burden he was willing to shoulder for his neighbors. There, in the sanctuary of his workshop, as the storm howled its fury outside, Ben labored through the entire night. The forge became a beacon of defiance against the winter's tyranny. The bellows roared, breathing life into the coal. The fire blazed, casting long, dancing shadows that made the blacksmith seem a giant at his task. The rhythmic, thunderous clang of his hammer against the iron was the only sound that could overcome the shriek of the wind. Sparks erupted with every blow, a fleeting constellation of man-made stars against the oppressive darkness. His breath misted in the frigid air that seeped through the cracks in the walls, but he worked on, tireless and focused. To him, this was not just a piece of broken metal, it was the vessel of a family's life, the fragile barrier between warmth and the fatal cold. He was not merely mending iron, he was mending a family's hope. When the first pale grey light of dawn finally filtered through the storm, the work was done. The stove was whole again, its cracked body reinforced with new bands and meticulously welded patches. Ben, weary to his bones but with a spirit undimmed, hoisted the mended stove onto his back once more and carried it back to the Dawsons. He installed it himself, his large, gentle hands ensuring it was secure. Soon a fire was crackling merrily within and a blessed, life-giving warmth began to spread through the small cabin. That day, the Dawson family felt a heat that came not only from the burning wood, but from the profound, selfless care of the man who had given of himself without asking for a single thing in return. The Dawsons were not an isolated case. As the brutal winter dragged on, Ben's forge became a lifeline for the entire village. He learned of a family whose axe handle had split, leaving them unable to chop wood, and he fashioned a new one from his own stock of seasoned hickory. He heard of another whose water buckets had been shattered by the ice, and he spent an afternoon mending the iron hoops and wooden staves. He went from home to home, carrying firewood to those who had none, his own precious supply dwindling with each trip. He shared what little food he had stored for himself, A sack of flour here, a side of bacon there, with those whose larders were bare. Many nights he went to his own bed with little more than a piece of dry bread and a cup of water for supper, but he never spoke of his sacrifices. To him, the strength of a community was a chain, and he would not allow a single link to break. He gave, believing that in giving, he was reinforcing the very fabric of Oakhaven and keeping it alive. The people noticed, though they knew his humble nature would never permit him to ask for thanks, they carried his deeds in their hearts. When the wind howled at night, parents would pull their children closer and tell them stories of how old Ben had walked through chest-deep snow to bring firewood to a neighbor. Farmers, sitting by their own fires, remembered how he had mended their tools without pay when their harvests had been poor. The name Old Ben was whispered in prayers and spoken with a reverence usually reserved for figures of scripture. He was their silent guardian. He forged the unwavering heart of their village through its darkest season. At long last, after what seemed an eternity, the cruel season relented. The wind lost its vicious edge. The sun began to shine with a tentative warmth, and the great mountains of snow began to shrink, melting into rushing, jubilant streams. The frozen earth softened, and tiny green shoots, miracles of resilience, pushed their way through the thawing soil. The village of Oakhaven stirred with renewed life, its people emerging from their cabins like creatures from a long hibernation. Their faces turned toward the hopeful sun, but they had not forgotten the man whose forge had been their beacon through the long dark winter. Quietly, a conspiracy of gratitude began to form. It started as a whisper between two neighbors, then spread from house to house. The farmers, preparing for the spring planting, set aside their finest sacks of seed and grain for Ben. The women of the village spent days baking loaves of bread, pies, and cakes. Children, overjoyed at their freedom, gathered the first wildflowers that bloomed on the hillsides. The men organized a party to chop and stack a mountain of firewood in his yard, enough to last him through 3 more winters. On a bright spring morning, they enacted their plan. A great silent procession of villagers made its way to the forge. They brought their gifts and laid them at his door, filling his small cottage and workshop with an overwhelming abundance of food, supplies, and tokens of affection. At first, Ben was flustered and protested. "I did nothing," he insisted, his voice thick with emotion. "I did only what any man should do for his neighbor. My heart requires no reward." But the people insisted, their faces shining with a love and respect that was impossible to deny. Sarah Dawson, with a healthy, cooing Lily in her arms, stepped forward. "Ben," she said, her voice clear and strong, "you did not just mend our stove. You saved us. You saved all of us. This is not a reward. It is simply love, returning to the one who gave it so freely." Slowly overwhelmed, Ben looked upon the faces of his friends and neighbors. He saw in their eyes the reflection of his own actions, and he finally accepted not only their gifts but the profound truth that kindness once given does not vanish. It ripples outward, weaving itself into the lives of others, and eventually it returns, multiplied beyond measure. The community he had held together with his generosity now held him in its warm, grateful embrace. Years passed, as years always do, turning the seasons and etching deeper lines on the faces of the villagers. Old Ben grew weaker, his once powerful arms losing their formidable strength. The great hammer that had seemed an extension of his own body grew too heavy to lift, and the forge that had glowed for so long began to stand cold and silent more often than not. Yet, the people of Oakhaven did not let him fade into loneliness. The children to whom he had given iron toys were now grown men and women with children of their own, and they cared for him as he had once cared for them. A grown Samuel Dawson, a strong young man now, made it his personal duty to ensure Ben's woodpile was always full and his fire always lit. They brought him warm meals, mended his roof, and sat by his hearth in the evenings listening to his stories of the old days. His final years were not filled with the clangor of labor, but with a gentle, resonant peace surrounded by the generations of lives he had touched. When at last old Ben passed from the world, the entire village mourned. They had lost not just a blacksmith, but the living embodiment of their community's soul. Yet his memory did not fade. It was kept alive, told and retold by firesides on cold winter nights, passed down as a foundational lesson to each new generation. His forge may have fallen silent, but the echo of his kindness rang louder and more clearly than the strike of any hammer on steel. The story of Old Ben the blacksmith became more than just a tale of one good man. It became Oakhaven's creed, a reminder of what constitutes true strength. It is not a strength measured by muscle or by the accumulation of wealth, but by the boundless capacity of the human heart to give. It teaches that acts of generosity, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, ripple outward with unseen power, binding a community together and returning to the giver in ways they can never fully anticipate. Thus the village remembered, and thus we remember still. Kindness, like common iron, may seem an ordinary thing, but when heated in the forge of a compassionate heart and shaped by selfless hands, it creates something more enduring, more beautiful, and infinitely stronger than steel.